All right, welcome to Module 3, Lesson 35, the extended version. So if you're watching this means that you have proven to me that you can do 2x2s and that you are ready to kind of move on and expand your thinking and be able to multiply numbers 3-digit and beyond by a 2-digit number. So we're going to be looking at this in two different ways today. We're going to be looking at the place value chart and then also be looking at the area model. So it's very much like the 2x2. You just again have one more place value that you've got to multiply by. So work along with me as I do this, because if you get into that work that I'm doing, you're going to start to create some of that muscle memory that'll help you as you do and create these problems on your own. So just like I do with a 2x2, I'm going to be thinking I've got to split one of these numbers up. Well, in this case, it's going to be easier for me to split that multiple of 10 up. So I'm thinking, well, 50 is going to be 10 times 5. So my new problem that I'm going to be thinking about is not 243 times 50. It's going to be 243 times 10 times 5. And it's no longer this, but I'm going to use my associative property and I'm going to move those brackets around. And instead I'm going to put my brackets around my 243 and my 10. So that's going to be my first step. I'm going to multiply what's in the brackets first. So showing that in my place value chart, I'm going to start with my 243. So I've got 2 in the hundreds, 4 in the tens, and 3 in the ones. Okay. Now just like before, when I multiply by 10, that means I'm going to move over one column. I'm going to shift over. So I'm shifting everybody over one column. Times 10, times 10, times 10. So I now have 2 in the thousands. I have 4 in the tens, 4 in the hundreds, and 3 in the tens. So I'm done with those. Okay. So I've shown this, I've multiplied by 10, and my last step I need to multiply by 5. So I need 5 groups of each of these. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm taking each of those groups and multiplying by 5. 2, 3, 4, 5, and finally 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right, final step, I've got to add up my columns to see what my final answer is. So I've finished that step. Now I'm going to add them up. So I did 2 times 5, which is 10. I had 4 times 5, which is 20. And I had 3 times 5, which is 15. So, holy smokes, look at my columns. I definitely need to be shifting some things over. So I'm going to start with my lowest number first, that tens column, because then if I shift things over, I won't have to regroup because I've moved place value discs over into the next column with a bundle. So I'm going to start over here to keep myself from having to do the work twice. So I'm looking for a group of 10, 3, 6, 9, 10. I'm going to send it over. So that is no longer a 15. It's a 5 left over because I got rid of that group of 10. Okay, over here in the hundreds column, I've got 4, 8, 9, 10. And I've got 2, 6, and 10. Well, it's 20, so I know that there's going to be two groups of 10 over here. So 1, 2. So I've used that one, and I've used this one, but I still have 1 left over. So this is not a 20 anymore. It is a 1. And finally in my thousands column, making again a group of 10. Well, I knew there was 10 in there to start, so I'm going to group those. Oops, let me try that again. Group those and send them over. And I've used that up. So it's no longer a 10, it's a 2. There's my 2 right there that are left over. And I didn't extend my columns quite far enough, but I have over here on that far side well, if I go one column past my thousands, I know that this is the 10,000s. Sorry for my wonky chart here, but I know that I have 1 in the 10,000s. So if I go in and fill in my ones place, I have nothing there. Put my comma in. So I'm showing that 243 times 50 equals 12,150. Now, I'm going to show you this problem again, not using the place value chart, and then we'll move on to the area model. Okay, so thinking about this, kind of like I did last time, I'm going to split that 50 into 10 and 5. And my new problem is now 243 times 10 times 5. Now again, I'm going to ignore the place value chart right now. I'm going to use that associative property, and I'm going to move my brackets from the 10 and the 5 to the 243 and the 10. And again, you could do 243 times 5 and then times 10. It doesn't matter that order, but typically I like to multiply by 10 first and then multiply my final number. You usually end up having less steps to do that way. So I know that 243 times 10, well, 243 times 1 is 243, but then times 10, I'm going to shift it over one column in my place value chart, which means I'm going to have a 0 there on the end. So 243 times 10 is 2,430. I'm going to bring down my 5. So for my final answer, which I'm going to put in that bubble right there, I need to solve 2,430 times 5. So again, you can solve any method. I'm going to do standard algorithm just because that's probably my quickest way to solve. So I'm thinking 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 3 is 15. 5 times 4 is 20, plus 1 is 21. And 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12. So 12,150, just like we got with that place value chart. Okay. Now this again works the same for numbers that are 4-digit, 5-digit, and beyond when you're multiplying by a multiple of 10. It's just how big do those numbers get, and how it really what step it impacts is probably this one right here, because this number on top just gets bigger. So that's really probably the biggest difference between what you're doing right now and any bigger numbers. Okay, we're going to move forward and we're going to look at this problem now using the area model. Now, you can, again, kind of work ahead of me if you want to stick with me and then try this on another problem. I'll throw one more problem on the end of this for you to practice as well. But just like we did our area models before, we've got to split our numbers apart. So not split them apart into factors, but split them apart into expanded form. So in this case, I've got 200 plus 40 plus 3. And then 50, although there's not anything in the ones, we do want to get in the habit of go ahead and putting that 0, even though it doesn't impact our final answer. Go ahead and getting in the habit of that, because it's going to help you as we move away from multiples of 10 and have numbers that are just 2-digit numbers like 53 or 56, those type of things. So go ahead and get in the habit of putting that 0 there. And then finally, I'm going to set up my area model. So just like before, this helps me decide how many columns I'm going to need. So because 243 is bigger, I'm going to put that on the longer side. And I know that I need 3 columns because I have 3 numbers that I've broken it into. And over here on the side, I know I've got 50 plus 0. Put my plus signs in there, which means I've got 2 numbers, so I'm going to divide into 2. All right, final step, I've got to solve for inside my boxes. So right here, I'm solving 200 times 50. Well, 2 times 5 is 10, times another 10 is 100. 10 times 10 is 100. 100 times another 10 is 1,000. And 1,000 times 10 is 10,000. So notice our number got big really quick, but 10,000. Okay, then I'm going to do 50 times 40. Well, 5 times 4 is 20. Times 10 is 200. And then 200 times another 10 is 2,000. So 50 times 40 is 2,000. Okay, then in my last box up top, I've got 50 times 3. 5 times 3 is 15. Times 10 is 150. Now my bottom section is pretty easy because everything is times 0. So 200 times 0 is 0. 40 times 0 is 0. And 3 times 0 is 0. Alright, final step, I'm going to add everything up inside. So I've got 10,000 plus 2,000 plus 150. I'm not going to add those zeros in because they really aren't going to impact my answer. It's just going to take up more space on my problem. So I'm going to solve what I need to. Zeros plus 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 plus 5 is 5. 0 plus 0 plus 1 is 1. 0 plus 2 is 2, and 1 plus nothing is 1. So again, my answer is 12,150. Alright, I'm going to do one last problem using that area model. I'm going to do a 4-digit by a 2-digit. I want you to pause, try it out, and then check your answer to see if you match what I do with a number a little bit bigger. Alright, final problem here. First thing I need to do is I'm going to stretch those numbers apart. So I'm going to pull the place values apart and be thinking about how many columns and rows do I need to divide my area model into. So I know that 3,496 in expanded form would be 3,000 plus 400 plus 90 plus 6. And of course I know that 40, although there's nothing in the ones, I'm going to go ahead and put my 0 just to get in a good habit to represent my 40. So 40, 4 in the tens, or 40, and 0 in the ones. And now I'm going to go ahead and divide up my area model. So I'm going to put my bigger number on top just because it's the longer side. It usually makes more sense to do that way. And so I'm going to have 3,496. And notice, the bigger the number, the bigger the column or the space I made. And one of the reasons that you do that is, first of all, to help you show visually that space is bigger than the other one. So in this case, really I shouldn't have any space for the 0. But I do want to keep that in mind for the future. But it also, think about the bigger the number, the bigger the answer is going to be. So it also gives you enough room for when you do go to answer these problems to have enough room to write them in the box. So my first one I'm going to solve here is 40 times 3,000. Well, 4 times 3 is 12, times 10 is 120, times another 10 is 1,200, times another 10 is 12,000, times another 10 is 120,000. Okay. 40 times 400, well, 4 times 4 is 16, times 10 is 160, times another 10 is 1,600, and times your final 10 gives me 16,000. Okay. Now we've got 40 times 90. So 4 times 9 is 36. Times 10 is 360. Times 10 is 3,600. So notice, when I'm saying times 10, I'm getting that from these zeros that are in your original numbers. The more zeros you have, the more times you're multiplying by 10. So for every 0 you have, you're multiplying by 10 for that 0. Not adding a 0, we're multiplying by 10. Final column here, we have 40 times 6. Well, 4 times 6 is 24, times 10 is 240. And then again, my bottom column is super easy for me right now. 0 times 3,000 is 0, 0 times 400 is 0, 0 times 90 is 0, 6 times 0 is 0. Okay, I'm going to clear some room here because I've got quite the hefty problem that I'm going to be solving out, but I'm going to take these numbers and I'm going to add them up. So I've got 100 20,000 plus 16,000. Notice I'm lining up those place values really well. Plus 3,600 plus 240. Zeros, 4, 8, 9, 3, and 1. So 3,496 times 40 equals 139,840. All right, this is where I leave you. You are going to have a few of the more challenging problems that I'm going to have you complete in addition to your problem set, so that I can see not only can you do those 2x2s and do those proficiently with mastery, but can you proficiently do these types of problems using the area model, and then eventually moving on with partial products and standard algorithm as well.